Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Xbox Casuals, the Xbox podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Dirrig, and alongside me, as always, is no nicknames tonight, Josh Finney.
Yeah. Just a brief note here at the top. Not gonna be a super fun show this week.
Yeah, all the fun stuff we're punting.
We're punting, and we'll decide like what's still worth talking about in July, aka like the AMD news, the Xbox Meta Quest 3 partnership, which that's gonna get brought up. Those are both get brought up in a way tonight, but not in like a super positive way. And even the news of Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 today announced coming to Xbox. Gonna kind of hold off on that also because yeah, this is maybe the bleakest week ever for Xbox.
This is man, this is a rough one.
Yeah, for those of you who maybe don't follow the news as closely as some of us do, yesterday, so Wednesday the 2nd, we got news of sweeping layoffs. There were rumors circulating as far back as like mid-May that this was going to happen. We started hearing they were going to be Xbox-centric cuts shortly before the summer showcase. And sure enough, end of the quarter came a couple days ago, and they have slashed at Microsoft 9,000 jobs. I should emphasize very quickly, 9,000 is not the number that was cut from Xbox. But Xbox did lose, several hundred employees at minimum. We don't have exact numbers right now, except out of King, and we can kind of estimate Turn 10. But
yeah, I think they said about 50% of Turn 10.
Yeah, so the long and the short of it, before we get into like breaking it all down, King lost 200 employees yesterday, which is about 10% of their workforce. 10% reduction there. Turn 10 lost half of its studio. The Initiative, the studio making Perfect Dark with Crystal Dynamics, they have been closed, and Perfect Dark is canceled effective immediately. Rare saw some layoffs and some key departures. There were two key members of Rare who have been there since the 90s, one of which was the director of Banjo-Kazooie, Viva Pinata, etc., who has now left. I'm trying to find Greg Mails has left.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Mails has left. Luis O'Connor has also left. They've been there since Conker's Bad Fur Day. Who else? We a handful of layoffs from across the Bethesda teams.
ZeniMax Online.
Online. I was getting the ZeniMax Online. We had a canceled MMO from them. That team, as far as I can tell, largely is still employed. They're just being redirected to other projects, aka Elder Scrolls Online. That's a whole shit show of its own that we get to talk about. And there were a couple other unannounced projects that we're starting to get the details of this afternoon, including one from Romero Games. John Romero, one of the creators of Doom and one of the founders of id, had a game that was being published by seemingly ZeniMax, and that has now been canceled. That studio is now in danger of closure because they have lost their funding. I'm sure he is going to step in to fund that, but yeah, it is bad. And somehow through all this, Contraband was not a canceled game.
Somehow. I feel like that game was canceled a while ago. To be
like
honest.
It was canceled, even if they're not saying it. We know that Halo Studios lost 5 or 6 team members, which we don't want to see anybody lose their job, but it wasn't 200.
Right.
It wasn't half the studio like Turn 10. I want to start with what this means big picture before we get into some of the individual cases, because there's a lot to be said about Turn 10, the Initiative, Rare, and ZeniMax in particular. And I think I want to start with who's to blame for this, because I think the internet has been really, really quick to blame Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, and I agree with that to an extent. But not for the reasons that I've seen floating around that just like, the corporate speak statement that Phil put out did not help the situation at all. That was actually really bad. He started out by saying Xbox is wildly successful right now. We're very profitable. We're in some of the best shape we've ever been in. And then proceeds to lay off all these people, which is very similar to the notes that he put out when Tango was shuttered, when Arcane Austin was shuttered, and then the layoff before that where Activision Blizzard came in and they laid off 1,800 people. So I do agree with the assessment that they are to blame, but in a little bit of a different way than the internet is leading you to believe. For me, it really feels like this is coming from the top. This is coming from spreadsheet watchers and from people who don't understand the gaming business. This was always going to be the price of the Activision Blizzard acquisition. Eventually, the other shoe was going to drop. This is the other shoe dropping. Non Treyarch and Infinity Ward Studios, non main Blizzard teams are going to get hit so hard in the coming years over this because they don't make the insane profits that Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, and Diablo do. That's the simple truth. I hate to say that. Forza's not even safe, and that's one of their most profitable franchises, if not the most profitable first-party franchise that is not published by Activision Blizzard. Turn 10's not even safe. So when I say that I blame Phil Spencer and Matt Booty and Sarah Bond and like whoever else is in a leadership role over there, I blame them less for who is getting cut and more that they allowed the situation to get to this point with some of these studios, because this is a point we have seen over and over and over again with these three and how they run these studios. Phil has given them so much leeway, too much leeway. And you can go back, you can find us saying this 2 years ago about Redfall and that whole debacle. But this has happened now multiple times this generation of games have taken years and years and years to come out, and there's no way for them to be profitable by the time they finally release. Right? You have, just off the top of my head, this generation, and I'm not even gonna talk about the canceled games in this. You have had this happen with Fable. You have had this happen with Perfect Dark is canceled now. You've had this happen with Hellblade 2. You have had this happen with State of Decay 3, which State of Decay 3 may not see the light of day at the rate we're going because it's taking so long to make. You have seen it. Forza Motorsport had this happen. Halo Infinite, anybody? That was so catastrophic that 3 months before launch, we pushed it back a whole year.
Yeah.
And brought in a brand new director to save the narrative and save the game. And it still launched bare bones. Flight Sim 24 last year didn't go over like super well. Redfall, Starfield, there's such a lack of competence in terms of the overall leadership at Xbox. And that's not to say anything about the culture problems that were at Undead Labs. That's not to say anything of just how many times they from the stories that we have all heard. Perfect Dark probably got rebooted about 3 times. Avowed got rebooted probably twice in development from what I could find. This MMO that got canceled from ZeniMax, they were working on this back in 2018, stopped working on it to put people on ESO, presumably after the merger, and then brought them back. They just had a vertical slice to show in March this year. They were planning for release in 2028. Like, what the fuck is going on over here? How many times has Fable been delayed now? How many times did Avowed get delayed? Outer Worlds 2 got announced 4 years ago with just a title, and it's just now coming out? Like, that's at least a better situation than some of these, I guess.
Right.
But at what point do the executives who make these greenlight decisions, and granted, they did not greenlight the MMO was greenlit underneath the old Bethesda leadership, like Pete Hines, but at what point does leadership have to start answering for this? At what point do they have to start paying, a little bit of a price, so to speak?
Yeah, it's I think the thing is like the whole kind of hands-off kind of Uncle Phil and Uncle Matt vibe.
It's over. It's done. It's failed.
It's clearly not going the way they want it to, right? And so,
no.
we love Phil. We love how he turned the brand around, but like this, they've got to be more hands-on, because clearly Satya Nadella is more hands-on more than ever.
Yeah. And not in a good way.
And I feel like that's because they aren't, right? And so
I don't disagree with that. What I think it is I think he got more hands-on because they spent $70 billion on basically Call of Duty.
Right, but did you see that Microsoft spent $80 billion? Did you see that Microsoft spent $80 billion on a new AI infrastructure program because their OpenAI partnership fell through? So
And from
Yeah,
everything I've heard out of these layoffs, a lot of the jobs that I was seeing that were non-King and Turn 10, I should say. King, Turn 10, and Initiative are being left out of this. But a lot of the others were in like user research roles and like monitoring the store and chats and things like that. They're leaving all this to AI.
hmm
Everything I have heard is that they are pivoting. They fired the head of child and family safety. That's one of
hmm
the people who got laid off yesterday.
hmm
What reasonable explanation do you have for that? There isn't one, by the way. I'm gonna just save it right there. It is devoid of humanity, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Xbox is the only place doing this. We've spent extensive time going over Ubisoft, EA. I mean, God, we talked about the Respawn layoffs enough. We talked about Embracer plenty. Sony closed the whole ass studio because Concord was so bad. Like we've covered this before, and I want to offer a little bit of rationalization for some of these projects. Everwild, from the reporting that we got yesterday out of I believe VGC was reporting this. I want to pull up their article real fast before we get back to broader Microsoft. There are expected to be some further layoffs there, essentially because broader restructuring of Rare. Um, do, 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 do. Including its prototype phase, Everwild has been in development for over a decade, with anonymous developers saying they had struggled to nail down a clear direction for the title even after a recent reboot of the project. Rare announced Everwild in 2019 and released another trailer in 2020. Updates on the game were scarce in the years that followed, except for Phil Spencer's insistence progress was being made earlier this year. And that is just fucking wild. The exact quote was, "It's been a while, and we've been able to give those teams time, and what they're doing is, which is good, and still have a portfolio like we have. It's a dream that Matt and I have had for a long time, so it's finally good to be there. We can give these teams time." Sources back in 2021 told VGC that development had been restarted from scratch, and Greg Mails had been put in direct control of the project. Xbox's boss Matt Booty said at the time, Rare's Everwild team wanted to make sure it had something special before showing the game publicly again. So I wanna stop with the corpo speak, essentially. Because clearly if you were that excited for this, and this lines up with the reporting we got from Jason Schreier on Project Blackbird, which we once knew from the leaks, the FTC leaks, as Project Kestrel. We found out that this is that same game, but that they liked the name Kestrel so much that they stopped calling it that because they wanted that to be the game's name. Um, that two people who were in the room when Phil demoed it earlier this year, when him and Matt went to go visit ZeniMax Online, that Matt Booty had to physically remove the controller from Phil's hands so they can continue the meeting because all Phil wanted to do was play the game. To
yep,
me, when I hear reporting like that, that makes me think that this is less on Phil and Matt and more on Satya Nadella and his spreadsheet crunchers, who are stepping in and saying, this is not as profitable as AI, this is not as profitable as Call of Duty or World of Warcraft or Diablo or one of these other mega franchises. We want more franchises. We don't want new creative titles. We don't want to take big swings. And I can even look at some of these games that were canceled and rationalize it. Everwild, if it really was in production for over 10 years in various states, the fact you announced it in 2019 and re-announced it in 2020, and it didn't even have a gameplay loop yet from everything that I remember coming out around that time, that's insane that you'd already been working on this for 4 years and decided to just keep going with it. That's wild to me. That's literally insane. Perfect Dark, we said at the top of the show, has been rebooted so many times in development. We know of at least 2 different times, one during COVID, one when Rebecca Valentine reported on it for IGN back in 2023. Ryan McCaffrey was livid about the Perfect Dark cancellation too. He was
I
like, I
saw.
think I speak for a lot of people when I say that was the demo of the year last year that we saw.
Oh yeah,
And I mean, you and I on our recap, that was my first party game of the show.
yeah, it showed really well. It was awesome.
It showed very well, and people, there's been a whole thing that was kicked up by Ethan Gatch over at Kotaku, who was like, well, basically everything I've heard was that it was essentially fake, that wasn't real. and the level designers came out who were like, we built that demo. That is a vertical slice, bud. That's a vertical slice. Which, wow, no shit. No shit, that was a vertical slice. You have Blackbird getting canceled. That was in production since 2018, and it was supposed to be an MMO. Like, it was still 3 years away from release. I can kind of understand why some of these projects, they just became money sinks. You know, this isn't a situation like with Scalebound, where Platinum essentially took the Microsoft money and then fucked off to do other things.
All right.
This isn't that at all, but it does make me wonder if they're going to start shifting into more of a publisher role. I mean, they're, for all intents and purposes, they're a third-party publisher now with what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And like that's fine. Like, you're still gonna have your hardware and whatnot. Just, you know, it may not be made by Microsoft here in a few years. Like, whatever. Xbox is essentially going to become a publisher. They're going the way of Sega, and a lot of that's. And Chris Dirrig made a really, really good point in his game business Substack, which I encourage everyone to go read. It is free. His opinion piece is called "The Xbox We Knew Is Dead." The failure of the Xbox project comes at a price, and we're seeing that play out. And he had some very, very, very good points in here. Although Microsoft and Xbox may be delivering some strong numbers, it's fiscally irresponsible to continue investing in things that aren't working, not just for shareholders, but existing employees too. All of that is true. And he says, you know, sometimes game development just doesn't work out. It isn't the only one to close studios. It isn't the only one to cancel projects. But what is also true is that for the last 10 years, Xbox has been defined by a persistent failure to deliver. And we've done this ad nauseum. We're not going to do this again. I think you have to go back to 2010 to see where the roots of what happened yesterday started. Yeah. You have to go back to the over reliance and the over investment on Kinect.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the Xbox One debacle with Don Matrick. Like, you know, it's been said repeatedly. Phil has even said that's the worst generation that we could have ever chosen to do badly in.
Mm-hmm.
We had basically no first-party games the back half of that generation that were of note, at least, that were quality. All of them needed more time to cook. And yeah, we've had some great stuff. Like, we're in the middle of the best year of Xbox maybe ever right now, games-wise.
Yep.
And this is happening. So if this is happening now, what does that look like when you have a down year and you don't have like 7 or 8 AAA releases? What does it look like then? Because I'm really scared to ask that question.
Right.
You know? And we haven't even covered like what's coming the rest of this year. They did come out and confirm that everything that was shown in the showcase is safe. Like, great. Yeah. Most of that's coming out in the next couple months anyways, out with the exception of Clockwork Revolution.
Right.
Xbox never covered from that 2013 Xbox One launch. Lost ground. The PlayStation has continued to do so ever since. But they never could deliver to games. Halo Infinite and Starfield arrived late and failed to connect with fans. Studio leaders blamed ineffective and small marketing campaigns, which was a consequence of Game Pass eroding the margins on first-party releases. These games are also not quite good enough. But this is the damning quote right here. And I agree this. I hope that they print this out and put this up in every fucking Microsoft-owned studio. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you can't deliver hit games, it counts for nothing.
Yep.
It counts for nothing. This goes back to another point. I mean, that line about ineffective and small marketing campaigns, Aaron Greenberg's got to fucking go if you want this brand to have a chance. He's got to go. The marketing is so atrocious that sometimes I don't even know when games are coming. And I talk about this console twice a month.
I'm dead serious. I'm so tired of him like tweeting out about like things you can't buy or like special controllers or whatever, and like there's no marketing about the games that are coming out.
Yep.
None.
Yep.
I'm so tired of it.
Like, dude, I'm so happy that we seem to have at least a marketing campaign around the Tony Hawk remasters, because we didn't get shit for Avowed, we didn't get shit for South of Midnight, we did not get a lot for Doom: The Dark Ages until about 3 weeks before it released.
Yeah,
I had friends who play on Xbox every day who, you know, admittedly don't follow this like we do. They only found out Doom came because they got one of those big ass pop-ups on their screen.
Right.
You know, Towerborn went very quietly into early access. Shocked that didn't become a casualty yet.
Right.
You know, we know that Sodic has laid off people. You know, I don't understand what we're doing here. Gears is 2 months out. You gonna promote a Gears remake? You gonna start promoting Ninja Gaiden at some point, or are you just gonna save all the marketing money for Call of Duty, which is 99% sure what they're gonna do? I'm actually shocked that they allowed Obsidian to have a double direct where they got to show a lot of Grounded and they got to show Outer Worlds. I'm
Right.
shocked.
Right.
They brought in Ben Schwartz for it. That's one of the few great decisions they've made marketing wise, is doing these directs after the summer showcase and doing the developer directs. Those are two very good things that I want to know who came up with those, and I want to just shake their hand, because finally you're doing what Nintendo has done and what Sony has been trying to do for years.
Yeah.
That is an effective way to market your games, but the general public still has to know. I can turn on an NBA game, I can turn on an NFL game, soccer, hockey, whatever. I will see commercials for PlayStation exclusives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't see that for Xbox. I'll occasionally see an Xbox one if I go to the movie theater, of all places, but it never has gameplay.
Yeah.
It's always like the
It's
power your dreams shit.
I can't tell you the last time I saw an Xbox commercial. And let me tell you,
Doom. I
as
saw one.
somebody
I will say I saw one for Doom, and that was it.
as somebody who watches a lot of kids television,
Mm-hmm.
every other commercial is a Nintendo commercial.
Yeah.
Every other
Well, I mean,
commercial.
Nintendo also. And I would argue that's knowing your audience.
Right.
Like, so I understand it with like kids games. When I'm watching an NFL game though, and I see multiple PlayStation commercials throughout,
Right.
why can I not get one for Xbox's latest release that is not named Call of Duty?
Right.
Because Call of Duty is going to get this incredible marketing campaign. Diablo, when it comes out with a new expansion, is going to get an incredible marketing campaign.
Yeah, it is.
But the most Xbox can seem to do is force a full page ad to my console that I can't turn off for whatever fucking reason. And like I look at the marketing that just happened for Final Fantasy 16. That was a great little marketing campaign. Yes, it was a game that was already out on PlayStation. You got Ben Starr to come back for it. That's great. That's great. It was funny. People remembered it. I saw people who don't even play Xbox sharing that and being like, oh, hey, this is actually great. I like this.
Yeah.
We need stuff like that for your tentpole franchises. Get the voice actors for Marcus and Dom to do that for the remake, and for E-Day. Like, get them in here for this. Steve Downs doing that for fucking Halo would be great. Get
Yeah.
people like Steve on stage. Get people who are actually passionate about these games to help run these campaigns. You have all these marketing people at these studios, and you don't let them do jack shit.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. $1 trillion company, by the way, fifth most profitable company in the world, can't afford to spend a few marketing dollars to make even more money. You got to spend money to make money. That's something I've always heard. That's something that we learned in marketing classes. You got to spend something to make something. You can't just expect it to materialize out of thin air because people love these games so much. That's not how the real world works.
Right.
I'm terrified for Double Fine and Ninja Theory going forward. I'm absolutely terrified, because they're going to look at those spreadsheets. I would go so far as to say that in 18 months, I don't know if Double Fine exists, at least under the Xbox umbrella.
I'm shocked that we didn't hear their name today.
I'm not, purely because they have a game coming out in 3 months. That is the only reason. The only studios that are seemingly safe right now are, in no particular order, Obsidian, Halo Studios. For some reason, they only lost a couple of people. Like, I mean, listen, losing 5 people is still losing people. Apparently, there's a lot of the studio knows there's a lot of pressure. We're getting that reveal in October. Great, you're starting to space things out again. Smart idea. id, Arcane Leone, Machine Games, the main Bethesda team, Blizzard, Infinity Ward. I don't know who else. Compulsion had some layoffs. I don't know how many, unfortunately. Off the top of my head, Undead Labs had some. I don't know. In Exile seems to be relatively safe. Obsidian seems to be relatively safe. But like, these are studios that are either about to deliver big ass games, just delivered a big game that was very profitable, like in the case of Doom, in a mega franchise, or crank out multiple games a generation like Obsidian. And I think this also goes back to the discussion that we keep having about AAA development costs and timelines. It is just not at some point very soon, everything coming day one to Game Pass is gonna stop. It's gonna
I'm
stop.
it's either going to stop or go up in price, and people are going to unsubscribe. So
Yep. Yep.
those are
I
those
have
are the
I
two
have a
options.
walkaway price on this, and it's one more price hike. I would go up for Ultimate. I would be willing to go up to 25 a month, and then I'm walking away. And that is only because we are finally hitting the cadence of AAA games. $20 was really hard for me to swallow when they increased that, but I stocked up ahead of time, and also, like, I knew the games were imminent.
Hmm.
This isn't like a 3 years ago scenario where there were no games on the horizon.
Right.
I want to go back to Chris's article here. I'm just going to keep referencing this because it's really great for discussion, I think. The Xbox project has failed, and as a result, Xbox is now a third-party publisher, one with a console and subscription service, but third-party publisher all the same. It's committed to hardware, but its partnership with Asus on the handheld and the news of a Windows-focused future for this platform suggests a different commitment than the one we're used to. Messaging the transition to its loyal and confused fans has been tricky, and the company appears to have adopted the boiling the frog approach of gradually releasing more and more games on PlayStation. Xbox gamers may not like it, but hopefully this will help the company deliver better financial results for its games and studios, even if it comes too late to save the console business. Many of the cuts made by Microsoft have been to its newly acquired businesses, and looking at today, the Xbox spending spree appears frenzied and reckless. It started small enough, and this is where I think we all agree on this first one. It started small enough with promise. Studios like inXile, Double Fine, Ninja Theory, and Obsidian were great game developers, but ones living from publishing deal to deal, campaign to campaign. They were teams constantly putting out interesting, impactful stuff, but lacking that tiny bit of quality that separates great from the really great. I was excited to see what these teams could do with the extra time and resources Microsoft could offer. I interviewed Xbox a lot around this time, and the likes of Phil Spencer would tell me he was looking to buy studios and IP that were doing different things to what Xbox was already doing. For example, he would tell me the firm wanted to buy a Japanese studio so it could appeal more in Asia, but instead it bought Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. And as a result, Xbox is publishing a frankly absurd numbers of shooters and RPGs. Were these acquisitions really part of their vision, or was it more out of fear that if they didn't buy them, somebody like Google or Amazon might instead? They transformed themselves into the biggest publisher in the world. Perfect Dark was canceled due to its own problems, but Xbox also doesn't need it now that it has Call of Duty. It's actually commendable that Xbox is still investing things like South of Midnight, Keeper, and Clockwork Revolution when it operates giant franchises. I'm sure under a different organization, Obsidian would have been asked to turn Avowed into an Elder Scrolls and Outer Worlds into a Fallout. Xbox didn't do that. So I want to pause there because I agree with all of this. And I think a lot like the elevator pitch that we got for Avowed years ago was imagine Obsidian with their take on like an Elder Scroll style universe.
Hmm.
And for better or worse, that's kind of what you got. Aora is a fascinating world, but I also really loved Pillars. I really like CRPGs. And I know that that's not the most broadly appealing thing in the world. Avowed should appeal to more people. And it just didn't, sadly. It didn't connect with people, even though it's a perfectly fine game. I've been playing through it the last couple of weeks. I like it. It's a solid 8.5 for me.
Hmm.
But if you're going in expecting Elder Scrolls or Witcher 3, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And I think that's what people expect now when they see a game like that, sadly.
Yep.
And I do agree that I think that things like South of Midnight, Keeper, Clockwork Revolution, um, what are some other games that have been announced or have come out lately? Psychonauts 2 being a thing that was several years ago. I know now they published as Dusk Falls. That Pentiment is what I keep coming back to. Pentiment and Grounded.
Hmm.
That I don't think those games would be getting made if it was a different publisher. And Josh Sawyer and Obsidian have even spoken about Pentiment and Grounded and been like, yeah, we were basically told make what you want to make, like you have the funding. That I feel like that offer is now off the table.
And I feel like the Activision Blizzard killed all of this.
It did.
Right.
I
I mean, if
think
they
that
wouldn't
it
have,
would have gotten there eventually with Bethesda, but Bethesda releases games so infrequently.
yeah,
So
but also they spent like 1/10 on Bethesda that they did of.
sure. And I think like when you bought Bethesda, you knew you were getting some mega franchises. You were getting Elder
Hmm.
Scrolls, you're getting Fallout, you're getting a perpetual revenue printer in Elder Scrolls Online, even if it's not up to World of Warcraft levels, right? You're getting Doom, you're getting Wolfenstein, you're getting Quake, even if you're just going to sit on and do nothing with it. Like you're getting all that. It's totally different when you go and get Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, Overwatch, Hearthstone. It's totally different. Like I saw somebody breaking this down the other day, and they says, as much as you hate to say it, like to a degree, the Tango thing made sense. Their hit came too little, too late
Hmm.
because Ghostwire Tokyo, both Evil Within games, they reviewed fine. They were like 7.5s, but they weren't amazing. And they cost a lot of money and time to make those three games. Hi-Fi Rush was a side project, and it ended up being like this great Game of the Year candidate. And by all accounts, that should have saved that studio. You should have pivoted hard into it. But I like, unfortunately, from the corporate side, I see them being like, well, we don't want to wait like 4 years on Hi-Fi Rush 2 and keep funding a studio in Asia. But I think that's stupid. But like, Hi-Fi Rush simply didn't sell, and people were quick to blame Game Pass. Those same people did not turn around and buy it on Steam or on PlayStation, though. That game sold less than like 2 million copies. I think it had like 2 million players roughly when Tango was shut down slash sold.
Mhm.
2 million players, and it was available on 3 separate platforms. So it's clear that like that it didn't connect, and I think that's the unfortunate part is some of these games can be so creative, but they just don't connect with Xbox audiences. Because Xbox has a very specific audience that is here for multiplayer and for, I think, for the shooters and the RPGs. But this was our concern when they got Bethesda, and it heightened after Activision. Look how many fucking RPGs and shooters they own. They kind of have the market cornered on Western RPGs and on shooters.
Right. Yeah.
BioWare's a shell of what it was. CD Projekt Red takes 10 years to make a game at this point. Larian is doing great work, but they make CRPGs like outside of Baldur's Gate 3. Like, how many of those have been, like wild commercial successes?
Yeah.
Not that they haven't been successful. They're very successful for CRPGs. I want to say that Baldur's Gate 3 went on a generational sales run, and player count still is. Divinity 2 was also really good. But by and large, it's kind of hard. They've led that resurgence, though. But when you think about like traditional Western RPGs, they control Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Fable. They control Outer Worlds, like the Pillars franchise. They have all that stuff under their umbrella. And then shooters. I mean, God, it's Call of Duty, it's Overwatch, it's Halo, Gears, Quake, Wolfenstein, Doom. Like, what the fuck? That is basically you have those two mega groups and a little bit of Forza sprinkled in. And that's basically your first party portfolio.
Mhm.
And I don't think anybody's decrying RPGs. I find that really weird that that's the thing Chris chose to focus on here. That's like my one thing I disagree, because I do think it's good that they've invested in RPGs. Nobody was investing in Western RPGs outside of like Bethesda, BioWare, and CD Projekt Red. Not at least on a AAA scale.
Right.
But I think that also you've seen some amazing games come from other teams. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is one of the best reviewed games of the year. Right? Like there's Expedition 33. We've talked about that like ad nauseum. Best game of the year so far. So
Yep.
I don't know.
It's
Keep going. I'm gonna keep reading through this and see what else we need to address.
it's just I don't this this is the thing with you know Sony, obviously Sony runs PlayStation, right? But it's for them, it's different because PlayStation is their biggest brand, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Xbox until recently has been their smallest brand, right? And when you work with for a company that is as large as Microsoft, you can't have the creative control I think they want, regardless of how you spin it or what you say, right? And like aside from the money stuff, right? Microsoft wants to see the numbers go up. They literally invented the enterprise spreadsheet, right? Like they want to see the numbers go up. And when you spend close to $90 billion on studios over the course of what, 7, 8 years at this point, like
Yes, 8 years.
that's a lot. That is a lot of money. It doesn't matter what size of a company you are. That is a lot of money. And
Yep.
they want to make that money back. And they are looking for ways to make that money back.
Mm-hmm.
And
The nickel and diming of Call of Duty has continued. We thought it was going to get better. Obviously not.
yeah, and it's just like I I I I said this before probably 6 months ago when this happened. The last time this happened at Microsoft, what was it, 6, 8 months ago at this point?
The Tango layoffs.
No, like
Okay.
the Microsoft did a mass layoff like right around Thanksgiving, I think.
I genuinely don't remember it
I
then.
mean, there's
Thank
so many
God.
layoffs, it doesn't
Yeah,
even
there's
matter.
been three major ones that I can remember, and I think that's three too many. So
Yeah.
continue.
And I think the Xbox team, the leadership team, would have a better chance at achieving their goal if they weren't working for Microsoft. If Xbox was just
Yes.
its own brand, right? They could be as creative as they wanted to be, they could be as nimble as they want to be. They have a plan, they could stick to the plan without worrying about who's hovering over who.
Can I take you back in time real quick?
Yeah.
You remember when Satya Nadella wanted to spin off the Xbox business
Mhm.
and sell it?
Yep.
Would that have been better for the long term health of Xbox? Keep in mind, this was in the aftermath of the Xbox One debacle. This was in like
Right. And
2015.
right. And I think so. I guess it depends, because when that was
Yeah.
going on, you didn't have, all you had was, Turn 10 and 343 and the coalition, right? You didn't have Ninja Theory or Bethesda, so like
Yep. Yep. That
they
conversation, that conversation is the fork in the road because it led to the Ninja Theory and
Mhm.
Compulsion and Obsidian. It led to a lot of
Right.
amazing things, right?
Right. But
That
do you
conversation
feel
led to Game Pass ultimately, led to
Mhm.
cloud gaming,
Right.
but it also led to Activision Blizzard.
Yeah, and I wonder if Microsoft would have, or I wonder if Xbox would have become a third party publisher faster because they couldn't get the box, get the
It would
funding
depend on who
and
had
R
bought
and
them.
D for the box,
To
right?
me, it
Like,
would depend on who bought them because I mean, if it was somebody like, because see, that's always the thing. Like, we can always say like, oh, the grass is greener. Like people have tried to do this with Bungie for years, right? Like, oh, what they just stayed with Microsoft. Well, they'd be gone probably now, in all honesty. Um, but I think like, what if EA had been the one to buy them, or Ubisoft had been the one to buy them? Maybe Sega decides to get back into the hardware business. Like, there's so many things that could have
mhm,
gone wrong there, and I just like, Google buys them and then closes them down after 18 months.
right.
Amazon has never been able to get its gaming, you know, ideas off the ground. So
I mean, Luna controllers are on sale right now, Josh, if you want one.
Microsoft
They're
kind of defied the odds and broke into an industry that really didn't want other players in it. PlayStation was still relatively new at the time too. Like PS2 had just come out when they announced the Xbox, or was about to come out.
right. But
So
if you remember in that that documentary they put out right before the Series X
great
came
fucking
out,
documentary.
it was awesome. But the reason why Bill Gates greenlit the Xbox is because PlayStation had the word browser on their dashboard, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And he didn't want Sony to take over the living room.
And I mean, like, listen, I love my Xbox. We wouldn't be doing this show if we didn't love it. It's getting really hard to be enthusiastic about the stuff that's coming, just like last
Yeah,
year with what is happening behind the scenes.
yeah,
It's really, really, really difficult because you think about the people whose lives are getting ruined, and this is before the economy is in the shitter, too, by the way.
hmm
It's going to get worse. Like, it's going to get worse across the board. It's going to get worse at Xbox. I worry about those smaller studios because they want established IP. Like, man, that leaves you with like 8 or 9 mega franchises, and that's all anybody's going to work on there. And that really frustrates me because that makes you no better than Ubisoft. That makes you no better than EA.
hmm
And you have the opportunity because I think even when Xbox wasn't putting out like amazing games, the Xbox One, they were putting out some creative ones. They put out stuff like Recore, Sunset Overdrive.
hmm
Um, those might be
yeah.
my only two examples, but they
I
put
mean,
those out.
even partnering with Remedy to put out Quantum Break, like,
Yeah, Quantum
I
Break
mean,
and Alan Wake.
they they were doing. I would argue they're still doing interesting things. They
Oh,
just
I think they're doing fascinating things. Like, where else is
it's
Keeper getting greenlit by a massive AAA publisher? It's
right.
not.
It's
Where's
this is
Pentiment getting greenlit? It's not.
and the more we talk about it, the more you can literally see the dividing line between corporate Microsoft
Yep.
and the Xbox team
Yeah, and
more and
like I
more.
said, like Phil and them deserve a lot of blame for it getting to this point because
Sure,
they've allowed them to just fuck around too much.
sure. I 100% agree with that. But also, you look at, they were talking about how great Everwild and Perfect Dark looked earlier this year, and the
Yep.
ZeniMax RPG,
Yep.
and 5 months later, like, you're telling me they didn't know that at how, like, how not in charge are you for you not to know that those are going to get canceled in 5 months
Yeah,
by
I
Microsoft,
wanna I wanna read a quote from Matt Booty here from yesterday. The studio shutdown and project cancellations reflect a broader effort to adjust priorities and focus resources to set up our teams for greater success within a changing industry landscape. And I mean, to me, that just means we're going to double down on like what got us here.
Mhm,
I almost wonder if, again, the spreadsheet pushers saw what happened with Concord and are seeing what's happening with Marathon and decided to pull the plug on that ZeniMax MMO.
mhm,
I almost wonder if that had to happen. And like, there's been declining numbers in, premium multiplayer games. Like, it's very hard to sell a premium multiplayer experience these days. A multiplayer only game. It's very difficult to do that and keep those numbers up. Like, we've said this so many times. And I do think like you have to pivot at some point, but like, man, y'all got to get more single player games out there. Like, there's one thing Microsoft's always done really well, and it's multiplayer gaming to me. And I think that's
mhm.
because they've always been so PC adjacent.
Right. And then you
And
you look at
now
their games as a service though, right? Like Sea of Thieves, Fallout 76. We talk ad nauseum about those games on this show, and just look at the constant revenue they're bringing in.
I
Aside, and then
counted
that's not even counting
14
Call of
games that they have constant revenue from right now. When I tried doing my numbers earlier,
Duty. Hmm.
I had Call of Duty, Halo, Gears, two Forzas, Diablo, Overwatch, Hearthstone, Sea of Thieves. I had Minecraft, and I mean it goes beyond that too because Grounded is a live service game. Okay, like that's a live service game. Towerborn is a live service game, even if it's not microtransaction heavy. There are microtransactions, but it's not reliant on that, right? There's a handful of others at both ESO, Fallout 76. We just said both of those. Like,
Hmm.
Age of Empires games, and like you have, and I think like to a degree, like you can look at that and you can rationalize and go, you have enough multiplayer games. But then why are we axing resources from turn 10? Why are we axing resources from ZeniMax Online? Why are we axing from the initiative? Like, if you need something to diversify that portfolio, why wouldn't you want to put out Perfect Dark? There's a perfect hole there for a game like that when Deus Ex doesn't exist anymore. When Splinter Cell can't seem to stay alive. There's a perfect avenue there. I would argue the only other studio making any game that's even close to that is, and they're totally different. They're just stealthy pew pew games. Are the IO Interactive? So, like, what's the objective here? And then all I can come back to is established franchises that they know the names of because they've been huge franchises for forever. Like, there is a huge push around Tony Hawk, which is, I mean, great. I'm happy for it, but it's so weird for me to see that be the game that gets this push. And I don't know if it's because it's licensed or what, but there is a huge push around that game right now
Yeah.
in a way that we did not get for the other first party games this year. That is just bizarre to me.
Hmm.
So, I want to shift into Project Blackbird. I want to talk about this because oh boy, I have some really mixed opinions on this one. This is from Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg. Um, let me figure out where I want to start with this. Do, 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 do. Slack accounts started getting disabled yesterday morning. Company scheduled a project update at 11 a.m. US East Coast time. During the meeting, they got the news Blackbird was being shelved indefinitely. Translation canceled. Shortly afterwards, the rest of the team also lost their Slack accounts. Next few hours were marked by chaos and confusion as employees found themselves in limbo, waiting to see what was going on. No emails and no messages from management or HR. The team believed they had been laid off but had not received any official word from the company. A day later, they got an answer. They were in job purgatory. Late last year, the staff unionized, but they had not yet struck a contract, so lawyers had to negotiate with the union over potential severance packages for anyone losing their job. In the meantime, they continued getting their pay. They will continue getting their paychecks and remain ZeniMax employees. The union told staff Thursday. QA staff who had a separate union with an established contract received severance packages mandated by the agreement. Blackbird wasn't the only project canceled. Obviously, Perfect Dark and Everwild, and cut off several external projects, including a first-person shooter developed by Romero Games, studio founded by John Romero and his wife Brenda. Blackbird's cancellation was particularly shocking because it had blown away Xbox executives just a few months ago. During the demonstration in March, Spencer was enjoying the game so much that Matt Booty, the head of Xbox Game Studios, pulled the controller away so they could keep the meeting going, according to two people in the room at the time. Despite some technological hiccups and a lengthy development cycle, the game appeared to be making good progress. Employees were stunned to see it get caught in the bloodbath. Elder Scrolls Online has received several updates and went on to bring in millions of players while transforming into one of the publisher's most lucrative games, bringing in $2 billion in revenue by 2024. $2 billion. That's a lot of fucking money, Corey.
Yeah, it's
That's on average, that's like 200 million a year since it went into full release. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of fucking money.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
That basically that is enough to keep a lot of passion projects alive, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, the company began building a team for its next project, codenamed Kestrel. Codename was switched to Blackbird because of Kestrel so much they wanted to use it as the actual name. Game faced early technical challenges and was put on the back burner because of the success of ESO, which vacuumed up studio resources. But in recent years, Blackbird's progress sped up. The team expanded to 300 people, delivered an impressive vertical slice in March, and was aiming to release in 2028. Now, here, are you ready to be upset, Corey?
As if I'm not already upset.
I don't know if you've seen this piece yet.
Oh boy. As if
Blackbird was a third-person online looter shooter, not unlike the popular game Destiny, set within a new franchise.
Oh my god!
Oh no! This next sentence is what literally had me like throw my phone. It had a sci-fi noir aesthetic similar to films like Blade Runner and placed a heavy emphasis on vertical movement. Players could use abilities such as double jumps, air dashes, grappling hooks, and wall climbing to fling themselves around tall buildings like superheroes. I saw footage of the vertical slice last night and was impressed. It was a slick-looking demo with alluring visuals and battle sequences. Executives were blown away when they played Blackbird in March, according to people familiar with the game's development. Executives had nothing but complimentary words for the project. The team began putting together a production plan that would flesh out the vertical slice and then build on more content for release. And then yesterday, it was canceled, stunning everyone at the studio. Matt Ferrord, the well-respected studio boss and director who founded ZeniMax Online and led ESO, immediately turned in his resignation. Staff were not given an explanation for the cancellation. It was set to be an expensive project, and Xbox may have seen it as too risky. It's a new franchise and a live service game entering an oversaturated market during a time when many other live service titles have flopped. The team was also building a brand new engine for the game while making it, which created challenges. Canceled video games are easy to glamorize. They will always exist in a crystallized state, preserved in our imaginations without any of the flaws or controversies that inevitably arrive upon release. But for people who saw and played Blackbird, this one stung. Yeah. I'm trying not to glamorize it too much here, but that is the kind of game that I always wished Xbox would make. And I understand the piece about it's an oversaturated market. We talk all the time, like Destiny is fighting to keep its player base, and that's been one of the most successful ones, right? And that was always going to be a problem facing Marathon. It still is a problem facing Marathon. It was a problem that was going to face Concord. Helldivers is one of the very few that's broken through in recent years. And who knows what the market looks like in 2028, but I'd be willing to bet that people are probably going to be playing more games like that than single one-and-done story games. And that feels like it's in line with what Xbox likes to have in its portfolio. But I can also understand, and I'm not trying to rationalize. I guess I am trying to rationalize a little bit. I'm trying to talk myself into understanding this because it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I would like to understand, Josh.
That you're building a new engine for it. And look how long that delayed Starfield when you made Creation Engine 2. Look at... They only had a vertical slice after 7 years, dude. Even if they did put production on the back burner, 7 years. 7 years, and all you had was one playable vertical slice? Really? This was greenlit under the old Bethesda regime, and I would assume that the transition to focusing on ESO probably happened when Microsoft bought Bethesda. That would be my personal guess, is because they saw, oh shit, ESO is a moneymaker.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, probably right around the time that Greymore came out, honestly. It was the return to Skyrim. It was glorious like that. They did another one that was about Oblivion Gates. They did one that was the return to Morrowind. You know, they had a Morrowind one, then they went back to Vvardenfell. And, like, it makes sense when you think about it that way of, okay, that's all they had, and they still wanted at least bare minimum another 3 years to make this game. I can understand how that's probably never going to be profitable in any way, shape, or form. I get it. And also, like, it's going to compete directly with ESO and World of Warcraft, two of the most popular MMOs out there, still churning. I kind of get it. When I think about it that way, I kind of get it. It
Yeah.
also leads me to believe that this was that rumored Star Wars game years and years ago that we'd heard the ZeniMax Online was making. There was a rumor going around about that back in like 2021, 2022. It leads me to believe that this was that game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we go from here, because if an MMO was not safe, then what is safe? Those games print money. They just do. Maybe they thought, hey, we don't, and I do think that the crowded marketplace is probably the easiest solution. Oftentimes the easiest explanation is the real explanation, right?
Yeah.
It's Schrodinger's cancellation. But that's not safe. Perfect Dark isn't safe. Everwild, I understand. I'm sorry. I'm not going to make any attempt to defend
No,
Everwild at this point.
my only thing with
10
Everwild is that
years,
my only thing was ever with Everwild is that it should have been canceled probably 3 or 4 years ago, to be honest.
that I think this should have gotten the axe 2022, 2023, probably. In all honesty, the fact that you rebooted it without even having a gameplay loop tells me all I need to know.
Yep.
And you thought Greg Mails was going to save you once again. Now,
Mhm.
losing Greg Mails and losing Matt Ferror out of those two studios, that is a bigger loss. That is a huge loss. That is decades of experience gone. You're also losing the head of the Initiative studio. Um
Well, it's not Rod Ferguson anymore. It's
no, Rod Ferguson was never there.
the Coalition.
No, the Initiative.
Oh, the Initiative. Oh, the Gallagher.
Yes. Yes. Holy shit. Um I'm trying Daryl Gallagher. That's who I was trying to. I kept wanting to say Jason because I follow an NBA guy named Jason Gallagher. Yeah, Daryl Gallagher left Crystal Dynamics to come do this. Now, granted, he
Hmm.
didn't really want to work on the Avengers, so like,
I mean,
but they spent a decade building this studio up and working on this game and rebooting it multiple times. And like, at a certain point, if it's not working, it's not working.
right.
I get it. If you got to reboot something more than once, it's just not working and you should move on to a new idea. What I keep coming back to with the Initiative is, and we said this years ago, why would you not start them with a smaller project first?
Right.
This was a studio of like 40, 45 people, and you expected them to make a AAA Perfect Art game.
Hmm.
Why would you not start them with a smaller game? Our friend Ray Apollo had this idea. He was like, what if you had let them, as a proof of concept, when they were like 35, 40 people, the size of like the Expedition 33 team, make a small proof of concept game, like a 5 or 6 hour
Or
game
like a
that acts
Ground
as a
Zeroes
prologue.
version.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ground Zeroes or something. Ground Zeroes. His idea was something like Shadow Complex.
Hmm. Yeah, that would have been cool too.
Give us something like, yeah, give us a Shadow Complex Perfect Dark game. Oh,
That would have
talking
been
top
cool.
10 things that I'll be upset that I'll never get to experience. I also just think this franchise is cursed. It's cursed.
Yeah.
Perfect Dark Zero was just as bad. Right
Yeah.
after, and then not too long after Perfect Dark came out, I wouldn't say right after, but like 2 or 3 years after Perfect Dark came out, Rare got bought. That was kind of like the last classic Rare game for Nintendo, I think, was Perfect Dark.
Yeah.
Maybe Conquer, depending on how you view Conquer's Bad Fur Day. But Rare, the management of Rare over the last 20 years also just kind of goes back to general incompetence by Microsoft. Like, you had one good game in that, you had two good games in that time frame. You had the Viva Pinata games and you had Sea of Thieves. And Sea of Thieves took a year and a half to be good. But we praised it when that happened because You gave them time to iron out the kinks. And Phil has even highlighted that, we pride ourselves in letting teams take time to fix this. And like, we like launching things in early access, like Grounded, because it lets us work with the players and this and that. Like, I understand all that. Like, canceling the Romero Games game, like, I've never been more upset about something that I didn't even know existed. It's
Yeah.
making me wonder if the Wu-Tang game, Project Shaolin, that was supposed to be published by Microsoft years and years ago, makes me wonder if that was in one of these past budget cuts and it just never came out.
Yeah, I
Because they're
wonder.
self-publishing. That makes me wonder if that was one of the casualties, and I would wager to say it was.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take too much more time on this. We have a Tower Casuals to get to, but any closing thoughts on this whole thing? Excuse me. We do have a question before we get to closing thoughts. We have a question. I
Question?
want. Yeah, we had a couple questions actually regarding this. Tiger Jesus writes in and asks, "Is this the only positive to come from the Microsoft layoffs in that Xbox is done with 6+ year development cycles?" I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because that was one of Matt Booty's stated reasons last year for
Yeah.
closing down a couple of those studios, was that they weren't going to deliver another game until like next generation. I would say yes,
Yeah.
personally. Also, I'm totally here for shorter dev cycles and shorter games. Not everything needs to be an 80-hour behemoth like Baldur's Gate or
Yeah.
Witcher 3 or something like that. Not every game needs to be like that.
I mean, that's what's making these budgets like bloated, is them trying to figure out how to pack this game. I feel like
I,
sometimes,
I
like, I
think
mean, not
so. And then,
every game, but like,
yeah, but I
you
mean,
know,
like, you look at something like, well, I was going to use Horizon as an example, but that is a very bloated game. Um,
I mean,
I would look at the budget for like Spider-Man 2. I know that a lot of that's licensing, but even if you remove the licensing, that game was still like 150 million to make, and that's a 20-hour game
yeah.
to platinum.
And even if you look at something like Assassin's Creed, right? Those games are so bloated, but there's like
Yep.
1,000 people working on every one.
1,000 people are working on them, and those games, but those games, like, they know they're going to sell 10 million copies without blinking.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed, for
And yet
whatever
Ubisoft's still in trouble.
we sit here and make fun of things like Assassin's Creed, but the reality is it's like the sports games. The same
Mhm.
people are going to buy them every single year.
I love Assassin's Creed, so
I like
I
Assassin's Creed when it gets down to $20. The last one I paid full price for was Odyssey, and I don't regret it for. Oh, excuse me, Valhalla. I got Valhalla for full price because I liked Odyssey so much.
apparently I was looking at my Xbox library, side tangent,
Mhm.
and Mirage is in my library, and I have no recollection of ever purchasing it.
Yeah, no, I'm really hoping that Mirage is on Prime Day next week, honestly, because I'd like to finally sit down and play it. I heard it's a more traditional Assassin's Creed experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Tiger Jesus, I would absolutely agree with that. I think 6 years, 6+ year development cycles are done. Ninja Theory is really lucky that they got Hellblade out when they did,
Hmm.
because I feel like if it had been delayed even one more time, they would have been on the chopping block, despite the fact that they're the Unreal gurus and that they have that mocap studio. I could see
My
them becoming a tech arm at some point.
That's what I was gonna say. I wonder if they would have let the developers go, like the art team, like they would have just been a support studio and an Unreal
Like, just
studio for this.
reassign them to like Leon or something.
Mm,
Arcane Leon.
mhm.
Because man, that's one of those gems of a studio that you hope doesn't get fucked. Um
Well, they
Jiggly
got that
Panda
Marvel money
writes
right now.
in and asks, "Is this a rare time in history where Xbox had a bad thing and a good thing happen in the same week?" I'm going to assume by the good thing you mean Helldivers 2. But yes, this would be a rare time where they had probably one of the worst days in the history of Xbox happen
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah,
But then they had an actual like groundbreaking announcement today that a PlayStation published game, not called Destiny, or well, the show was actually published by MLB now.
hmm,
Even though it's made by Sony, this is a bona fide first party Sony game coming to Xbox.
yep.
It took us a year and a half to get here, but Xbox fans have been asking for this. So I hope that people show up and play it. I
I
really do.
think some PlayStation fans have been asking for it just so more people can be in the game when they're playing, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those games like it really took off, and then it like every other game, it kind of had trouble keeping player numbers up there. Like in my experience, even though it was steady, sure, but it wasn't doing like
Yeah,
the Fortnite numbers anymore.
right.
That
I also think that game was also not meant to be as big as it was
I
either,
don't think
right?
it
I
was
mean,
either.
they
Yeah, I
definitely
mean, it was
weren't
a $40
prepared for that.
game. Like
Yeah.
that free DLC they put out, though, I heard nothing but amazing things about that.
The Killzone DLC?
No, the Killzone DLC was just cosmetic. They put out an actual free DLC at the Game Awards last year.
Oh, right. And like it added like a new faction or whatever.
They invaded Super Earth. Yeah,
Mm.
a new faction. Well, new to Helldivers 2, but it was from the
Right.
original Helldivers.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I always said like big updates is what would get me back into that game. I will probably pick this up on Xbox just because I want more games to come to more platforms.
Oh yeah, I will definitely be buying it on Xbox. I've been holding off on PlayStation. I was like, I feel like the window is closed for me to even like play this
I
seriously.
mean,
So I'll wait
at
for
least there's
sale.
not like a story you have to worry about or anything.
Yeah, I
So,
know, but
but I would say that this is one of those examples. I mean, they've been having a great year. They've been having an awesome year at Xbox.
mhm.
We've talked about it, but like you look at the last year, and they had Age of Mythology, they had Aura, they had Black Ops 7, they had Indiana Jones, Flight Sim, Avowed, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, Doom, South of Midnight. They're about to have Tony Hawk. They're gonna have Keeper. They're gonna have Black Ops 7, Outer Worlds 2. They're gonna have
Gears. Two Gears
Gears. They're gonna have the
games
Gear. Hilariously enough, Gears and Helldivers are both coming out on the same day.
on opposite platforms.
I found that really funny. Um,
That's awesome
so
though. That's
hey,
a good story. So
it's great. Two third person shooters
yeah,
showing up on opposite platforms. I
I
actually kind
think
of love that.
I think it's gonna be the gaming version of Barbenheimer.
Pretty much.
Uh,
Gear Divers.
yeah, Gear Divers. You heard it here first. Hashtag Gear Divers.
Gear Divers. Gear Divers remastered.
Oh God.
But I mean, like this obviously is a gigantic stain on what has otherwise been and will continue to be an awesome year. And that's not counting, we've had massive updates to get. Sea of Thieves has continued to get great updates. We got, updates to 76, obviously. ESO had an expansion. Diablo 4 had its first major expansion with Vessel of Hatred, which was awesome.
Mhm.
I hear that Overwatch 2 is going at a steady pace these days. Like, we should be happy right now, and now we can't be in the middle of the best year Xbox has ever had. And they just had a banger showcase too.
I know. They always find the rake to step on.
We said it. They set out rakes, and it's a game to see how long it takes for them to step on it. And it took a little bit longer this time. It wasn't. I was expecting the layoffs to come the Monday after the showcase. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I will say, although Jason says that my final word on any of this, he says Blackbird is effectively it is canceled, but them saying that it's going on the back burner gives me some hope that maybe they see the public outcry about it and
Mhm.
think, man, should we give it a try? But I do agree with the analysis. Putting a looter shooter out there is really hard to do if you're not Borderlands. Making it an MMO. Now, listen, if you went and made it something in the style of Borderlands, where you just did a couple DLCs for it, you gave it support for like 2-3 years and then called it a day, we'll go over way better. Way, way better, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. Take out the MMO aspect. Not
Right.
everything needs to be an MMO, but you will still make plenty of money off of that game, especially if you put it multi-platform. I would actually really love to see that, but I mean, it's not going to happen, but that's a path you could take with it, Maybe if you are restructuring, maybe they see, I think the studio head resigning has to be like, oh shit, did we make a mistake here? But I think you're
I
going to
mean,
see a lot more of like what Playground and Obsidian are doing, juggling multiple projects, having multiple big teams. Obsidian has they right now they have the Outer Worlds 2 team, they have the Avowed team, and they have whatever the fuck Josh Sawyer is doing with his people. And that's a
mhm.
small team of like 15 people. And then they have the grounded people who I think some of them have been disseminated back, but the others are overseeing Eidos Montreal right now. You have at Playground, you have the Horizon and you have the Fable teams.
Mhm.
And I imagine a lot of the Horizon like art people are helping with environmental art right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's all hands on deck to get. And let me tell you something. That game has to be a fucking slam dunk now. It already
Yeah.
needed to be, but I think there's now even more unnecessary pressure on that. I think there's going to be pressure on Bethesda to get Elder Scrolls out the door.
Yeah.
I man, it's a rough time, and it's a rough time across the entire industry, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. But
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna get worse before it gets better. I feel like, especially at
yep,
Xbox at this point.
we are at an inflection point, to
And
say
I
the
feel bad
least.
saying that because I
I
am
adore
really
my
enjoying
Xbox.
Xbox right now.
I
I'm
adore
really
my
enjoying
Xbox
it.
so much. I have not had this much fun with the first party of Xbox in like 15 years.
I mean, not just first party. Like I downloaded Metaphor and Final Fantasy 16 yesterday.
Sure.
I'm trying to pick out which one I want to play next. I'm like itching
And
to
like that
play.
was another point that Chris made in his piece, was that like Game Pass has been on a roll, even though like the price increase last year, they've been on a roll. Like Expedition 33 is the game of the year right now, and it was on Game Pass day one. And
Yeah.
like that studio has come out and been like, no, we love Game Pass. Game Pass has been awesome for us.
I feel like Game Pass, like the Game Pass announcement, put that game on the map for people, right? I
It did.
mean,
I mean, well, that was the first announcement we had, was of it at the Shimmer Showcase last year, and they announced at the end of the trailer, it went bam, day one Game Pass.
yeah, it's
And we
certainly my
all
game of the
came
year
out of
so
that
far.
show going, this was one of our game of the shows.
Yeah, it's certainly my game of the year so far right now.
It is my game of the year, and there's maybe like 2 or 3 games that I think can match it the rest of the year, unless I'm just blown away by something.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're doing a game of the year watch right now, that's clearly in the lead. I think the rest
yeah,
of the year games that you're looking at are Donkey Kong Bonanza, Outer Worlds, Ghost of
maybe.
Yote, and maybe Metroid Prime 4.
I was gonna say maybe Death Stranding
Oh, Death
2.
Stranding's absolutely in the conversation.
Yeah,
100%. I would say that's the only other one that is right now worthy of being in the game of the year talk, like broadly.
yeah. I feel like people are talking about that, like this second game, the way that people were talking about Breath of the Wild when it came out.
I have talked to 3 different people who played the first one and have played the second one. None of them loved the first one. It was fine. They have all
Hmm.
loved number 2.
Hmm.
And they have encouraged me to go play it, even though I did not play the first one. So take
Yeah,
that for what you will.
I did buy Death Stranding 1 when it was on sale the other day. It was 20
I
bucks.
I will give it another try eventually because it's on Game Pass.
It is? Death Stranding
PC.
is?
It's on
Oh,
PC Game
PC
Pass.
Game Pass. Oh.
I think it used to be on console Game Pass.
Well, then I wasted some money if it is on Game Pass because
Just get us out of here. Get us out of here, Corey.
yeah, we got some Destiny to talk about. So everybody out there, sorry this was such a downer episode, but
Yeah.
thanks for listening. I know everybody's really just angry and disappointed, and like it's just really hard to be an Xbox fan right now. But I think I speak for both of us saying I hope everybody out there affected by these layoffs. Um, I know at least 2 people from Microsoft who got laid off listen to this show specifically. I hope everybody out there finds finds their way, and it just sucks. I feel for everybody. I really do. Um, and everybody out there, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Josh, thanks for your time as always. Appreciate you. Um, and yeah, tune in next time for Xbox Casuals. New episodes every other Friday. Uh, yeah, I can't end the show like I normally do. Everybody,
No.
thanks for watching. See you later. Goodbye.